Hey everyone, I am Kimbra in Los Angeles, and this is Kellie in Rock Springs, Wyoming. Hey Kel, can you tell us what your rant is today?
Oh, yeah. So this is related to our friend Jeff, who posted something on Facebook, which we both responded to this week. He was talking about people returning the grocery cart back to the store. So you take
I remember that.
And returning it back to the whatever, that little cubicle, or back to the store.
Yeah.
And how it's rude. You know, people leave their grocery cart right out in the parking lot, and it's either sitting in a parking space, or it can blow away and, you know, run into somebody's car or something. So I agree with him. I think it shows a lot about your character, the kind of people who don't take their carts back to the store.
Right. You're so true. You're so right about that. And I think we had another mutual friend, Craig, who responded, and I'll just piggyback on his response. He was saying 99% of the time he does, unless his back is out or you got too much to carry. And he's like, you know, I know there's been a few times, but I always put it on the curb or something, or like, so that's not going to hit a car. I'm always worried about car door openings. I'm worried about that. I don't want to wreck someone's car because I don't want anyone wrecking my car.
Yeah. No, it's understandable. There's going to be times, like I have to say, you know, when in the snow, when it's been really, really, really cold, but I've put it in a place where it's not going to run into somebody else's car, but I haven't necessarily walked it all the way back to the store. But in general, I had this friend once that used to tell me, oh, well, I don't take them back because, you know, it gives these young kids a job, which I feel like was just an excuse, something that a lot of people, you know, use, excuses for their own laziness.
Yeah, and those guys appreciate it when you bring it back into the thing, because
I don't want to go out and bring those in.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's my rant for the day.
Okay. Well, I'm excited about our guest coming up, my old friend Jon D'Amore. You always wanted to know more about Jon D'Amore. I know you did.
I've always wanted to know more about Jon D'Amore.
Inquiring minds want to know.
You know, he's a really interesting guy, and he's written a lot of books. And so, yeah, I'm excited to chat with him today. This will be fun.
He's had, he's a man, not to make this into a pun, but he's had many chapters in his life. And you've made a cute little montage that we'll show later. But yeah, he's led a very interesting life. And we're going to hear all about it because Jon D'Amore is not shy. That's the one thing I can say.
Yeah. He's a talented, interesting, handsome man. So yay. Yeah.
Yay. We can't wait. So Jon, welcome to Kellie and Kimbra in the Moment.
Good afternoon or evening, whenever you show this. And hello to both of you.
Hey, hello.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so used to seeing you in the hot tub. Where's the hot tub?
I'm not going to bring my laptop out to the hot tub for a handful of reasons. Being electrocuted is probably one of them.
Right.
Don't want that.
But you just caught me. This is what it is when I do my readings. This is how it looks. And I just finished one about an hour or so ago. And I figured, why don't I just keep the set the same way?
Yes, you look very mysterious in black.
Isn't it nice?
Well, let's make the introduction. So you started out in the music business, and then you were
not exactly coming out of the womb that way, but yeah. Not long after.
Days. And from reading your bio, then you were a corporate CEO or corporate executive in New York City. And then you went to Hollywood and you were a script doctor. So you've had quite an interesting life. And now, one of the reasons that we're excited to have you here is you're the author of 4 books. And we're really excited to hear about them.
Yes.
What was the first book? Where did you start?
Wow. Okay. That does start coming out of the womb. My first book is a memoir. And when I wrote it, I never anticipated any other books, because what author starts his series of novels with a memoir? That usually comes somewhere down the line.
Right.
But this, I grew up, I was born and raised within obviously, you could tell from my book, from my accent.
And from your last name of Love.
I'm not from Santa Fe. I'm from right outside of Manhattan in New Jersey. I grew up seeing the Empire State Building on a daily basis. That's how close we were to Manhattan. And during my 4 years of high school, my high school window, I was able to watch literally for the 4 years it took to build them, the building of the original World Trade Centers. So that's how close I was in New Jersey. So besides, like Kimbra said, being Italian and growing up in that area, and my family on my dad's side being there since the early 1900s, they were involved in a certain culture that Italians had been known for throughout the, say, 20s on up to the 70s, early 80s. And certainly I was not one of those guys, but I certainly grew up in that family and in that culture. And like you said, I went directly, started taking guitar lessons at 7.5 years old. So and took them literally weekly until I was 21. So for 14 years, I was a trained musician, which enabled me to be able to become a studio musician back east. And so I had experienced, because I was a musician and out in Hollywood, where my another part of my family, which I know Kimbra will want to talk about later, wound up owning a very famous Hollywood restaurant from the 30s up until the early 80s. And I was
the Villa Capri, right? The Villa Capri.
Yes, that was it. Actually, they had another one that they started with called the Casa DAmore.
Okay.
And then a few years later, they also opened up the Villa Capri. And but I was out there visiting the family around my birthday in 1975, which was a great time, folks, to be 22 years old and a musician in LA. So I could just tell you that. If you want to know more, buy the book. But anyway, so I on my 22nd birthday, or for my 22nd birthday, my godfather, who was back in New Jersey, invited me out to Las Vegas to celebrate my birthday. Now, what 22-year-old kid would not want to go to Vegas on his cousin's nickel? You got to remember, I didn't see him as my godfather, which he was at, from being baptized at birth. I saw him as my oldest cousin, who I just loved and respected anyway. And so when he said, meet me out in Vegas, okay. And he gets me a suite at the very brand new original MGM Grand up on like the 25th floor. And then I wind up being given a $25,000 credit line. And I have never gambled before in my life. And I, over the course of a few days, lost $25,000. And every step of the way, my godfather and his friends that were out there were telling me, don't worry about it, you did great. And wow. So I found out that I had become an unwitting person in this scam that these guys were doing in Vegas that had started a year earlier and went for 2 full years, which I happily went along with just to be part of what they did to get this money. And so after a couple of years, it wound up the casino, one of the several casinos this was taking place at, found out about it. And as they say, the proverbial feces hit the fan and people wound up disappearing and stuff like that. and they took me for a nice drive in the desert and told me to bring back a message to the guys back in New Jersey. Again, folks, this is all in a book. The boss always sits in the back.
Yes, that's Jon's
anyway,
first book.
So all of this happened, and I knew it would make a great story. And so you asked, how did I write the first book? Well, there's a whole chapter about me telling my godfather back then how great of a story it would be, and how he told me it could never happen until 3 of those specific people had passed away in one fashion or another. And my godfather was the very last one to pass away in 1999. And I began, when it was determined that he had terminal cancer and was going to go soon, I began writing the book and making sure that everything that I was writing was correct, passing it through him. And so when I moved to LA in 1999, I started writing the book. And I wrote this manuscript that, everybody who read it thought was just magnificent, except the people of business in LA, where, silly me, you don't sell a book in LA. You sell screenplays in LA. You sell books in New York City. And I had just relocated from right outside of New York City to LA, a year and a half or 2 years earlier. I had no interest on moving back to New York. And I had left being a corporate executive in New York to go to LA. And so I wrote the manuscript. And then from there, I wound up this wonderful attorney and the only attorney who I will ever say is wonderful, who's still my attorney to this day, for entertainment attorney. He told me, it's a great story, but if you want to do something with it, you got to turn it into a screenplay. I didn't know how to write a screenplay. So as Kimbra will attest, I joined this group, which I had been a member of, called the Writers Group of Studio City. Mm-hmm. And in it, at the time, were some really good screenwriters who I learned from. Mm-hmm. And then I, of course, had to take specific classes, and I refused to read any books other than, if anybody out there does write screenplays, the only book you should listen to is called The Screenwriter's Bible. Anybody else's version of writing a screenplay would be simply listening to 10 different people get 10 different versions of how to do it. The Screenwriter's Bible, the latest edition, that's the way to do it. So anyway, it must have been good for me, because within a year and a half of starting to learn how to write a screenplay, I wound up having the people in that group pay me to edit their screenplays. And then my attorney brought me to a major production company down at Warner Brothers, who I actually thought they were going to do my movie, The Boss Always Sits in the Back. That was the premise of the meeting, until they told me there wasn't enough explosions. This is a company who did a lot of explosions in their movies. And, it was a true story. Even if you fudged it a little, what do you put in? Only one explosion, Right. They wanted 30 explosions. So, but on the other hand, they did like the way I wrote and the way that I formatted my screenplays and so on and so forth. And they said, would you be willing to look at one of our projects and, do your magic to it? Sure. I did. I think I worked on about 35, 37 pages. And 2 weeks later, I got a check for like $15,000. Wow. And I said, this is a business I could do.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I did that for the next several years while I lived in LA.
Wow. And
Kimbra could tell you, I enjoyed life while I lived in LA.
You enjoyed it very much.
So the title, which is, very visual, The Boss Always Sits in the Back. How did you come up with that?
Well, that's a good story, and I talk about that. That's a chapter in the book too.
What happened
was, as again, I was asked by the boss of New Jersey, the man who ran New Jersey for the Genovese family. He had heard that again, this was around 1976, 77-ish, right around there. He had heard that I worked in a recording studio. Now, a lot of younger folks may not recall this, but back then, recording studios did everything on tape. It wasn't done digitally.
Right.
And so because I worked in the studio and had to learn how to, punch in is something when you're playing something, but you have to take it again, but you want to tie it into the first part that you did it. The engineer has to be able to punch it in so that it's seamless. You can't hear the edit, okay? Which you could on tape. Today on digital, it's very easy to edit, but back then you had to know what you were doing. And if you remember this, folks, we didn't have earbuds or pads. We had these big monstrous earphones that you heard everything in, and it was just magnificent. So apparently he had been taped by the state police of New Jersey, and they had charged him with everything from extortion to murder. Okay, now this was the boss of New Jersey, and so it would have been a feather in their cap to convict him. But he was positive that the things that was said on this recording, because in a lawsuit, they have to give you the evidence, it's in discovery. So they gave him the recording, they gave him the transcript, but he came to me and he said, and this is an older guy who doesn't really know even audio tape technology. He says, I'm positive that what was said on this tape, these are words, but that wasn't the order that it was said in. And they made it sound more incriminating. And I said, well, okay. And so as I discuss in my book, in my parents' home in New Jersey, I built a 4-track and then eventually an 8-track recording studio in our basement, which is not something that is known in California. In New Jersey, we have basements. And so I had this nice big studio in my house, and the guy came over and gave me the cassette, which is how they provided it at that time, and the transcript. And I told him straight out, I said, listen, man, if I don't hear it, I'm not going to lie. I'm only going to tell you the truth. And if I don't hear anything, I'm not going to go on the stand and say I do. Okay? And he says, no problem. And I realized that I'm hearing a tape that probably 3 other people in the world have heard. The people at the FBI, somebody at the FBI, the guy who runs New Jersey, his attorney, and me. So I don't know if I really want to hear what's on this tape, but I hear it. The thing is, what I heard was a variety of ambient sounds that had changed in the background that the average person would not have recognized. Plus, knowing the New Jersey Turnpike, while some of the conversation was taking place in a car, on the New Jersey Turnpike at that time, before they had Easy Pass, when you had to stop and pay a toll to a toll taker, you get on the turnpike by getting to a machine, take the toll ticket, okay? And then you get off the turnpike by paying your money, okay? I just happened to notice that it was 2 times in a row that they paid the money. So it was when they got on the turnpike and got off. Then later on, when they were returning, they got on the turnpike and got off. And I heard legitimate edits that I believed. But now again, let's remember, this is 77, I would say. There really wasn't computer technology. But how
were they recording him?
Say again?
what were they using to record him?
Well, it was called a Nagra body recorder. It was a tiny little tape recorder that ran very slow, like I think, like 1.5 seconds a second. 1.5 inches a second.
Mm-hmm.
And it ran for, I believe, 30 minutes, and then you had to turn the tape over. On a little reel-to-reel it was.
Oh my gosh. Where was
it? So you actually hear the guy, the state policeman, saying, listen, I got to go to the bathroom. And then he goes into the bathroom, and then it's the other side of the tape.
But where was the recorder? Where was this recorder?
He had it on the inside of his thigh, and the microphone was on his left hand, down his
wow. Okay.
sleeve.
That's like the movies. Well, I guess, yeah.
No, the movies take it from reality.
Yeah.
So anyway, I brought it to a guy who was actually an audio technician, and I don't know if you girls would remember, but there was a time when they had a thing called oscilloscope. It was just that round screen, and a line would go across, and it would have like a jump on a scope.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, we ran the tape through an oscilloscope, and every time there was an edit, the oscilloscope didn't hear, it saw the splice. And so he was able to prove that in court. And, it had it knocked out of court. And that was what made the story happen.
Okay.
I saved the mob boss in New Jersey 40 years in prison, and all they gave him was $1,000 fine for having an unlicensed shotgun in his house.
Wow.
But the thing is, in the recording, while the state policeman is opening the back seat the front seat of the Cadillac, so that the boss would be able to get in the front seat next to his driver, and then the new guy would be in the back. The boss has said to him on the recording, you can hear it, it's perfect. The boss says to him, are you the boss? And he says, no, why? He says, because the boss always sits in the back. You get in the front. And so I always said, the minute I heard him say that, when I listened to the tapes, I was like, that is going to be the name of this book I write someday. And so that's how I came up with The Boss Always Sits in the Back. It's an actual something that was actually said by the boss.
It's a good title. It's a really good title and a good story.
Yeah, Jon, I want to ask you a little bit. We'll go back a little bit to your. I don't know if it's the same side of your family, but the Villa Capri that was open in Farmers Market. So was that your aunt that owned it, or
no? It's my father's cousin. My father was Patsy D'Amore. It was called Patsy D'Amore's Villa Capri.
Right.
The actual story is this: in the mid 1920s. Patsy and Franklin was older. Franklin and Patsy came over from Italy and stayed with my grandparents, who had by that time 7 or 8 or 9 kids. My father was like the 8th, I think, and he was born in 25. So they came over, and what had happened was Patsy, like all good Italians, opened up a pizzeria in Brooklyn, and he would literally travel every day from right on the Hudson River where my grandparents were, over to Brooklyn every day and run his pizzeria. Franklin, on the other hand, had bigger aspirations. He became a vaudevillian. And he actually, and he spoke a good Italian accent like that, but he was a good-looking Italian guy, and he was very muscular.
Mm-hmm.
And he did like an acrobat tumbling kind of act, and always used very pretty women. There's a whole story about him too, and his pretty young, let's put it, young, pretty women. I don't want to say pretty young women, but that's, but anyway, so Franklin eventually around 1935 got the movie bug and was out in Hollywood doing what he did and saw Hollywood, what was going on in the up to the mid 30s. I mean, sound was happening now. And
Sure.
So he came back to New Jersey in 1935. 1936, the two brothers got on a train, went back to LA, and bought a lot of land in the northwest part of the valley, which was Woodland Hills, Chatsworth, Van
So that's
Nuys.
why your love of Chatsworth started there.
It possibly did. You know, again,
He lived in Chatsworth for a while.
There's a whole thing with Franklin. I don't know if either of you girls remember. Boy, I'm saying that a lot. I don't know if you know, but certainly if you've been to Malibu, you're familiar with the name Leo Carrillo.
Yes, I know that. I know that, Leo Carrillo Beach.
Do you know who he was?
No.
Okay, the very first color cowboy show, Western, a weekly TV show, was called the Cisco Kid.
Mm-hmm.
And he played the Cisco Kid's sidekick, Poncho.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but you see, back before that, back in the 30s and 40s, he was a very famous Mexican actor, and he came to America because they were making all these movies that they certainly could have used a guy like him, and TV shows. So he and my father's cousin Franklin, the first thing they did was they bought a ranch in Chatsworth. And bought about 200 horses, not for their love of horses, but because they had a deal with all the studios.
Sorry, you guys, let me turn off my phone.
Who were making Westerns at the time, and they literally rented out the horses on a daily basis and made a fortune doing that. Well, anyway, in the meantime, Franklin and Patsy on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and Cahuenga, where I think Michelli's is now, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
They opened up the Casa DAmore, which was the very first Italian restaurant in Hollywood. And it was the very first pizzeria in all of California. You can Google it, folks. I'm not kidding. Patsy DAmore, Franklin DAmore, the Casa DAmore.
Yeah. And everybody who was anybody used to go there. Like, I was fascinated about James Dean and Marlon Brando.
Yeah,
I saw all those pictures.
He used to go to Casa DAmore, and then there's the story about how they met Sinatra. If you believe Cousin Franklin's story, he and Patsy were in the Casa DAmore, and behind them was, as people in LA or Hollywood, especially Hollywood, would know, were the alleys where you would put your garbage cans, where the garbage trucks would come and collect the garbage. And there were two guys beating the crap out of this skinny little guy somewhere around 1941, 42. And Franklin, who had literally come to empty the trash into the garbage can in the back, saw them beating somebody up. And like I said, he was a big muscular guy. He went back inside to the kitchen, grabbed a cleaver, came out, told them to stop, go away, leave him alone. And the big guy, the guys who were beating up this little guy went away. He never said they ran. He just said they went away. And the guy they were beating up was Sinatra, who apparently was messing with some mob guy's girlfriend, and they were beating the crap out of him. And so Franklin brought him inside, and the next thing you know, he's like, wait a minute, you guys were living with a family in West Hoboken, and I lived in West Hoboken? Oh my God. And then he became best friends with Patsy and Franklin. Yeah. And so just the fame of that caused them to open the Villa Capri, Patsy DAmore's Villa Capri. And I mean, Kimbra has seen the pictures, everybody. Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall used to go there quite often.
Wow.
And unfortunately, and I don't know if you know the story, it was Humphrey Bogart and Pat O'Connor, an Italian. an Irish actor's name. I'm sorry, but there were a few of these guys. Edward G. Robinson was one of them. They were the original Rat Pack. They used to meet at Humphrey Bogart's house, and Lauren Bacall used to call them the Rat Pack. They'd play cards every week, and especially when Humphrey Bogart got sick, they would always be there, and Lauren Bacall called them the Rat Pack. So, as the story goes, they're at the Villa Capri. There's pictures of Lauren. Oh, they had Humphrey Bogart's memorial dinner at the Villa Capri. So you can imagine who was there for that. And so at the table, and there's a picture of them sitting together at one of the tables. According to Sinatra, Lauren Bacall said, "Well, Bogey's dead. You can have the term the Rat Pack now." And that's when he gave it to, his guys, the Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, Peter Lawford, Joey Bishop.
Wow.
That's really fascinating.
Oh, yeah. And so like Kimbra was saying, James Dean used to eat at the Casa DAmore and come to the Villa Capri all the time, and was very close with Patsy. And the night before he was killed, when he drove up to Paso Robles, up north, he was having dinner there with Alec Guinness, who wasn't Sir Alec Guinness yet. It was only 1955. And so they had dinner at the Villa Capri, and this is all documented. James Dean told Patsy that he was leaving the next day to go up north, and Patsy made James Dean a bag of Italian sandwiches to take with him.
Aww.
And unfortunately, when they found the car, there was the bag of sandwiches.
Right.
You know, so there you go. Do you have any idea what that would go for today?
The sandwiches?
Just the bag. You know.
I know. I saw the pictures. I was looking at it the other night, and I saw his the girlfriend he had, Pierre Angeli. I was telling Kelly about it. She was so beautiful, and supposedly she broke his heart. But they went to the Villa Capri together, also.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. A little bit Hollywood trivia.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's something even more trivial. In 1955, now you have to understand the connection here. Let's just say because of the things that my father was involved in after returning from World War II. Apparently, from time to time, favors might have been done for the family out in California, possibly. Because
this is all hearsay.
Yeah. Who knows?
Because I
allegedly
wasn't even born. But in 1955, when the opening of Disneyland was happening, we were invited to be guests of Patsy, and his wife and 3 kids at the time, invited us to come to the opening because they were being invited by that day's Grand Marshal, Frank Sinatra. So we were going to walk into Disneyland. So I was one of the first kids wheeled into Disneyland. I was not yet 2 years old. And so we were out there on that trip for Disneyland for the first day. And we were also obviously hanging out with the family at the Villa Capri. And the way my father always told the story was me and my father, and he was holding me in his arms, were in the kitchen of the Villa Capri hanging out with Patsy, because that's where all Italians hang out, in the kitchen of the restaurant. And and as he normally would, because he didn't like coming in through the front door, because people, not that they called them paparazzi or anything then, but people knew that this is where James Dean came. Yeah. James Dean walked in through the kitchen door, and he was with, and I know he was with Pierre Angeli, but I checked with Patsy, I checked with the family. He walked in with an 18-year-old, who's the girl who was in the first James Bond
Ursula
movie?
Andress.
Ursula Andress.
I know it.
18-year-old Ursula Andress. And
she was beautiful too.
To the day my father died, he said, she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen when she walked in with him. Now, so she walked in with James Dean, and he starts making he starts making his own sandwiches back there. So he comes over to my father, and he takes me from his arms and says to my father, "So what's the kid's name?" And my father says, "Jon D'Amore." And James Dean says, he looks at me and he goes, "What do you know? We got the same initials." And then he handed me back to his father, and he went back to his sandwich, and that was it. And so that's my little bit of
hence JD and JD
trivia. There you go.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so that's my first book. The Boss Always Sits in the Back, folks. You can get it at www.jondamore, JONDAMORE.com.
That's johnoflove.com.
Oh boy. Now you're going to have people going to some guy, johnoflove.com.
No, I'm kidding.
Website.
It's John. Spell it for us one more time, John.
Yes. JONDAMORE.com.
I'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to have it. We're going to have it.
Okay, so where do you want to go from here?
I just want to mention.
What was the next book? What came next? There's more.
Oh, wait, Kimbra had something.
I was just going to say, you're a man of many talents, as people will see, because we made this little montage. Kellie did it a really good job of all your.
Huh?
Yeah, and John invited me to do this music video with one of his friends a couple months ago. Kellie really loved it. Remember?
I did. I thought it was a really snappy song. I liked it.
It was right for the time. You know, it was,
very
this
topical.
Time. It's right.
Well, it was real upbeat and happy, and that's always.
There you go.
That's true, and you looked great. And so now we're memorized. We're enshrined in film together. You and I, in a video.
That is true. That is true. No, we've taken many photos together.
That's
is the first
true.
time
John
we're in video together. Yeah.
John, when he lived here, used to go to the Hollywood Bowl every for the jazz festival, right?
Yep. We used to buy about 50 tickets and 5 rows of 10 people, and we had a great time every day.
There's many pictures you can find on John's website on Facebook as well.
But you guys have known each other for a very long time.
Yeah, I actually read his screenplay when it was called Mad Avenue. That's when John was, when I first was living in LA, and someone told me. It's got to
be easily 15 years at least.
I would say 15 years, yeah, because when I just moved, not just, but I'd been in LA for a little while, and someone told me about this guy, Jon D'Amore. He's an interesting fellow. He's a really good writer. So I remember I met you at Priscilla's in Burbank, right? Where you took all of his meetings.
At that time, right? Especially if I was living up on Mulholland at the time, if I was going to meet somebody, especially, I don't know her, and
she could be a stalker for all I know.
She doesn't know me, so what am I going to say? Yeah, come on up to my place off of Mulholland.
Yeah,
read
my groovy pad.
Yeah,
that place was amazing. That place was amazing. It had this panoramic view, 3/4 view, right, of the valley.
Oh wow,
Hollywood,
all the way over to the Hollywood sign.
Yeah,
if you craned your neck just right.
So eventually you did make it up there. Eventually you did go to.
Oh yeah,
yes.
when I moved to LA from New Jersey, I had a lot of money. I had.
It was plush.
We like that.
But then after you live in LA and rent a place up on Mulholland Drive, and don't earn what you are spending, you wind up in Chatsworth.
Right? Nothing wrong with Chatsworth, folks. It's just that, it's a little
far. There's anything
up.
wong with that.
Yeah.
It's just that
it's not Mulholland.
Instead of looking at the view, you are now part of the view.
That's true. But you've really arrived when you live on Mulholland Drive and you have the view, That's one of the places.
My time in Hollywood came and went.
If you like the show, go ahead and click subscribe. We really appreciate it. Thanks.
I mean, again, it's in my book. Before this guy was the boss, he worked as the bodyguard for the previous guy who worked for Lucky Luciano.
Mm-hmm.
So I was almost born in the back of his new Cadillac. He drove my mother and father to the hospital when my mother was having ready to have me.
Huh.
And he just happened to be the car that, and he drove it too. And all he kept saying to my mother was, "You better not have that kid on my new leather seats." You know.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Wow.
but those are the people that were at our weddings and our christenings and the baptisms and all that stuff that, Italian families would do. These people all should, at weddings, we had separate tables. Again, it's in the book. We had separate tables that had to be set up just for these people. Where you've seen the scenes in The Godfather where the guy shows up at a table and takes a picture. That just would not happen. It just would not happen. But anyway, but I grew up like that. So none of it, not knowing any of that, even though me and all my cousins had the same bicycles, even my mother and my aunts all had the same washers and dryers and mink stoles, and, because that just happened to be what was on the truck that week.
Right.
So that was that. But anyways, so I grew up with it, but I didn't think, anything of it until everybody started watching these movies in the early 70s that made people aware, hey, this is how these people are. And I'm like, wow, it's just like one of the weddings we used to have. The FBI would be outside taking pictures all the time.
Right. But
Wow.
I wanted to get back to your books, like your book tour. How are you going to channel that, through the rest of the year?
Okay. So, normally I would do a tour I would arrange to have a book come out around May or June, let people enjoy it during the summer and get some good response from it, and then take that response and use it for promotion in September and October. As Kimbra's probably been to a handful of my readings, I go from here to LA, and then I just start, I just start in LA and go east across the country to pre-set up locations that all has to start 3 months before the book even, comes out. So you book these things, and then I make my way across the country, wind up staying in New Jersey for a couple of weeks, putting on 18, 20 pounds, and then coming back on a northern route, coming through Cleveland and then Chicago and then down and then back down to New Mexico. That was what I've done for the last, 5 tours over 8 years.
Right.
So that was what was planned. Of course, come the end of February, beginning of March, when, America shuts down, all of that had to be done. Well, all of that had to be canceled. I was even planning in January to go down to Florida for about 2 weeks and doing a Florida tour, because I don't know if anybody knows this, but half of New Jersey goes down to Florida.
Sure.
Or they have moved down to Florida.
Snowbirds.
Yeah, exactly.
Snowbirds.
But I did a tour there about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was like, New Jersey with palm trees. It was all my people came out, and this was just for the boss. So I haven't been there since. So I expected it to be great. And I booked this great, and this was back in February, I booked this great tour that was going to happen in January, 11 months later. And of course, even now, in July, we can't determine, will it be safe to bring people together in January? I'm not going to be the guy responsible for anybody getting sick.
Sure.
So I had to postpone that. So in order to do all those things, and because I just enjoy, from being a musician early on, playing on stage for money when I was 14, and just it being like that for years and years and years. I just enjoy sort of performing for people. So, you know, when I would do these readings, especially when I would do them in LA, I would have Tim Piper, the guy who does
Imagine.
John Lennon, yeah, from Just Imagine.
Sure.
I mean, the guy's been,
we worked with him on a show that we did, Kellie and I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then you know Tim. So I've had Tim come and open for me for 3 years in a row. So, and I would get up on after he says his little wonderful little bit about me and about the book, then he'll call me up and we'll do a song, and I just enjoy doing that with Tim. And like Kimbra said with the video that we did for Jon D'Amore, I haven't played professionally in years, but it was fun to just do this video with Jon. I need once a year to get out and get in front of the masses in some fashion. But now it's been a year and more than a half, and I haven't been able to do it because I didn't have a book ready for last year. So I need to do it. So that's why I'm doing these Zoom readings every weekend and literally doing them regionally across the country.
Right.
Next week I'm starting, or this coming week, I'm starting in LA, or actually all of California, on Saturday and Sunday at noon California time. Folks, just go to the Jon D'Amore Facebook page, and somewhere on it you'll see a post with the Zoom link and a password, and which will probably go up on Monday or Tuesday or something. So or sometime during the week. But anyway,
you're doing a virtual book tour.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Digital, virtual.
Book
tour. That's what it is. Yeah,
that's the word, virtual.
I'm just having fun getting in front of people. The only difference is there is no podium. I'm not sitting in a room with 50, 60 people. And after it's over, I don't sit at the table next to the podium with a line of people bringing books asking me to sign them. And, you know, shaking hands or giving a kiss, which I hate to say as being an Italian, boy, is that going to be a problem when things change.
Well,
you know.
Look at the bright side. Look at all the gas money you're going to save.
Yes, wear and tear on the car, shipping of books. Oh,
yeah.
There are some advantages.
So the next book, we'll try to do these faster. The next book it was at least like 4 years after The Boss. I didn't think I was going to write anymore. People were just hounding me. When are you going to write something else? So I had this script that I had written with Steve Barr. You remember Steve, right, Kimbra?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So Steve Barr was a wonderful writer from the writers group. And we always wanted to write a script together. So Steve was wonderful at the horror genre. And apparently I was pretty good at the mob genre. So we decided, you know, let's put these two things together. So the current thing at the time was zombies. So we decided, let's make them mob zombies. So I had I had a bunch of stories that were left over from The Boss that, you know, I just didn't use in the book. I mean, in the screenplay and the book. So I had these stories. So we made up characters, this is their backstory, and this is why they had to be killed, and then where they were buried, and why they wound up reanimating. By the book, folks, Dead Fellas. And also available on that website. But anyway, that, you know, that was just a lark. So I decided, okay, I could take that script, blow out the 85-page screenplay that it was, and make it a 170-page book, and tell a whole bunch of backstory. I loved doing it. And I put it out just to pacify the Boss people, but the majority of them were like, ooh, zombies. The thing is, there's an entirely different audience for zombies out there who loved mob zombies. So whatever didn't sell from the Boss people, I wound up getting this entire new audience for Dead
Wow,
Fellas.
that's great.
So that was that. The really cool part was that when I went back during the tour to do the Dead Fellas tour, I actually did a reading in 2 historic cemeteries while I was back east.
Wow.
That have, you know, like they have in LA, they have one where they show movies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this one shows movies. It has concerts there on the anniversary of famous dead New Jersey people. And so they had me do a reading there. I actually did one with Carmine Appice, the drummer
Carmine.
from, yeah, okay, so you know who Carmine
I know
is,
Carmine
but,
from, I know
He's
him
a
from Rod
musician, right?
Yeah, he's from Rod
Say again?
Stewart, but, oh yeah, she asked if he was a musician. I said, I know him from
Oh.
Rod Stewart,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I know
Well,
he was
see,
in,
there you go. You know from Rod Stewart. I know him from like a decade before that, from the Vanilla Fudge and from Cactus and from Beck Bogart and Appice.
and he co-wrote or he wrote Rod Stewart's most
Don't You
famous-
Think I'm Sexy?
Yeah,
and,
do you think I'm sexy?
Oh, wow.
And Young Turks.
Right, right.
Yes.
When Rod was going through his disco phase.
And you know, he
And it
probably
sold.
gets a lot. He probably smiles every time that song gets played. So, so anyway, I did that tour, and Dead Fellas was great. And so then it became, well, I don't want to hear the people again. And so I had this story called The Delivery Man, which was, you know, it is not a true story, even though pretty much everything about each episode or each person's life in it is a true story. It's just that since all the bad people die, that's the only part that's not true. You know, as a writer, one of the great things is you can do things or get rid of people who just seem to piss you off, you know?
You just cut them right out.
And in doing that, I wound up also making it it has a subplot that involves saving the United States from a nerve gas attack from North Korea. So, yes, and of course there's love between the delivery man and an FBI agent. The Delivery Man, folks, also available at jondamore.com.
Don't forget that
Jon
website.
Yeah, JONDAMORE.com. Available in discounted gift packs.
Just in time for the holidays. Just in time for the holidays.
Just in time for Memorial or Labor Day.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Thanksgiving.
There you go. So I did that, and then it was like, well, what's the next book I'm gonna do? So then I had this other story, as Kimbra had mentioned earlier, that I had written years and years ago called Mad Avenue, but because of the TV show Mad Men, it didn't make sense. So I just, being the genius that I am, it wasn't really different or difficult to come up with another title just as good, as long as I have lips. And so again, I blew out that story, and it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it, and it's completely different than my other stories. With each book, it's important to me to not be, had I stayed a mob writer because of the boss, I'd be a mob writer, and that gets tiring. You can only tell that story so much, and all those guys are dead, or at least, and the great things they did have been told 30 times already. So then, and I'm not a horror writer like Dead Fellas was, but it was fun doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The Delivery Man was an action movie that was just, at the time, really cathartic to write. And so I enjoyed writing that, and people enjoyed reading it. They probably, it was wonderful because it was now satisfying the boss audience again. And then I come in with this romantic comedy. Nobody gets killed. There are no zombies. There's no visible sex. There's no drugs. but it's a great story about older women and younger men in the advertising and cosmetic business.
Wow, I have a friend that would really be interested in that. My friend Lucia. Who might come on later, actually, later on in next month.
So I wrote The Delivery Man, and it was because I didn't get a book out the previous year. I figured, well, let me get this book out somewhere towards January. I was like, well, I can put this out in April. Hence me booking the tour in February and March. And then the book was going to come out. I had no choice at that point. So the book came out, and I had no way to promote it. So this is what's happening. So now, what's the next book, you ask? I knew that was going to be your next book. It's another story that I originally had co-wrote the screenplay with a friend who's actually a friend of Kimbra, and I would assume you know her too, Kelly. Laura Fawino. We had written a screenplay quite some time ago called Rub Down, and so I said to Laura, hey, I'm going to blow this out and make it a book. And she said, sure.
And,
why not?
And so I'm writing it now, and seeing as I don't go anywhere anymore, and I'm not doing anything overly exciting. You can only, Kimbra, you can only sit in a hot tub so much.
I know, you're going to be shriveled by the end of the night.
And that's a bad thing. So, I write a lot. I mean, on the weekends now I'm doing the readings, and fortunately filling orders for people who buy the book and who buy it through the website. It's also available ebooks through the website, and you can get them through barnesandnoble.com and amazon.com if you don't need it signed. And so I just, I'm enjoying writing. Certainly, if after living right outside of Manhattan for a large chunk of my life, and then in Hollywood, even though I had been going to Hollywood many years since the 70s, then living in Hollywood for 14 years, and then moving to Santa Fe, I must tell you, folks, it is not the most exciting place.
Santa Fe?
Yeah, compared to New York City and Hollywood. Anyway.
Different. What took you to Santa Fe? Why did you go there?
Witness protection program.
No.
No, it was just the right thing to do at the right time. We'll leave it at that.
I get that. I get it.
And
well, maybe after we sell a bunch of books, you'll get a little pied-a-terre somewhere in LA.
No, if I did move back to LA, and this is for sure, and don't think that I'm not playing the lottery here, folks.
Okay.
If I did move back to LA, I would find someplace nice around San Luis Obispo area.
Wait, that's up north more. Yeah.
Yes. It's literally halfway between LA and San Francisco.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so if I had to be in LA, I could be there in like 3 or 4 hours, but nowadays you don't need to be anywhere most of the time.
No.
Electronically, and the downside is we needed a pandemic to teach us that.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
true. I really, I'll be the first person to say I would much rather be doing my readings in front of a room full of again 50 to 80 people, or sitting in a room with one or both of you, recording this.
Yeah.
I know. We had to figure a way to connect with people, and this is the way it is for the next foreseeable future.
Yep. Zoom. We're all Zooming now.
Again, and I'm gonna say this again. You girls probably don't remember this.
Okay.
But if for those who can, if you think about it, everything short of the flying car the Jetsons were right on the money. If you recall, this is how they communicated. And remember, I don't know if you remember, but Jane Jetson, sometimes she didn't have her makeup on, so she had a picture of herself, you know, and she had a picture of herself until the robot or something can fix her face up in 8 seconds, and then she would, you know, do that and stuff like that.
I like that. So you know, that's funny. That's funny. I didn't watch the Jetsons, but I went to the science fiction museum in Seattle, and it made me realize that a lot of books that are science fiction do really, you know, kind of imitate science fiction, and I don't quite get the connection yet. But it's, you know, you read these books.
It's both ways. It's science fiction comes up with it first, and it gives somebody when that sort of technology comes along, it gives someone the idea, and there's also people who are working on new ideas that we don't know about, that they're also writing about. I mean, if you think about it, I believe it was Arthur C. Clarke who first came up with the idea of geosynchronous satellites in the sky that stay in the same place as the Earth rotates, and now we have that. The GPS and cell phones and everything else would be thoroughly lost without that.
That's true. That's true. Yep. Well, is there anything that that we missed that we should talk about before we leave you, Mr. D'Amore?
Come on, I don't know.
Let's see.
I could do another 45 minutes, and you know, and I haven't gotten 12 years old yet. You know.
I wanted to ask you one quick thing about living in New Jersey. How often did you go into New York when you were a kid, or did you ever go into New York?
That's a really good question. My parents, you know, because of our proximity to New York. There was no need to go to New York. Everything that it's about, you know, my parents weren't people who went to Broadway shows, or we didn't go down to Little Italy, because every time my family gathered, it was just as good as being in Little Italy, you know, for food and stuff. We really didn't go to New York. I started going to New York as when I was 9 years old, 10 years old. I had written a story about, you know how like when you your first day back at class in school in September, your teacher says, you know, your first homework assignment is write about what you did over your summer vacation.
Right.
And so my dad, you know, was really good with that. It was just me, him, and my mom. And when I reached a certain age, you know, that I could appreciate stuff. Obviously, I don't remember Disneyland. We would go to like Valley Forge and West Point and all of these great American history places. So at that summer, it was before the Beatles. I remember that. So it was just before. It was September of '63. So I was 10, and write a story. So that summer in July, when we went on vacation, we went to Gettysburg, and so we come back to New Jersey, and then the teacher says, "Do this." So where the average kid wrote, you know, I went to Seaside Heights, New Jersey, or we went to Long Island, or we went to the Poconos or the Catskills. I wrote this story, handwriting, wrote this story that maybe like was 8 or 9 pages. I really don't remember, about not me going to Gettysburg, but I wrote it about a 9-year-old kid who lived in Gettysburg during the battle.
Right.
And how he saw everything and what was going on from the top of the hills and stuff like that. So the teacher read it and sort of flipped out on that and gave it to the principal, who had his secretary type it up, on carbon paper. I don't know if you remember that. And then they put it on a Xerox machine, you know, so probably it was like a 4 or 5 or 6 page, I don't know, typed up thing with a cover, you know, my name on the cover.
Wow.
And they distributed it, not just to the school I was in, but the entire county of my grade, you know, maybe grade. And so that sort of, you know, started my writing thing. But anyway,
it was a natural gift for you then, it sounds like.
I guess, but I really didn't do much writing after that. I wrote for a newspaper as a musician when I was touring. A local New Jersey paper asked me to write an article while I was on the road with them. There was some, I'm sorry, I had gone so far off, I don't even remember what the original question was.
Oh, I just said when you were a kid growing up in New Jersey, how often did you guys go?
How often did we go? Yeah. Okay, so to get to the point, so because of that, there was an exchange student that was in the city I was in, and the people that they stayed with had heard from my school's principal that, somebody from Finland needs a history buff. We got a kid who wrote this story about Gettysburg and the American Civil War. You want to meet him. So these people had these exchange students who were my age who would want to learn about America. And I got to learn about these people, mostly from Finland, Norway, stuff like that. Very Aryan type kids, blonde hair, blue eyes, but very smart. They spoke English perfectly.
Right.
And so I would get taken into New York for cultural things, museums that I would never have been brought to as a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old kid. Museums, openings of events, Navy ships as they came into, because these people who had the exchange students had government passes through the UN for whatever the hell they did. And so I got to experience a lot of those things, certainly not somebody who grew up in the culture that I grew up would experience. So I got to do that. Then I hit high school. And the music biz, you know, when I started performing the local dances and stuff like that. And we're now talking about a time when concerts at Madison Square Garden was happening, you know, and the Madison Square Garden, to get from my house to Madison Square Garden was literally a 12-minute bus ride, right from, you know, Secaucus, where I was living at the time, right through the highway, right through the tunnel, into the Port Authority, and then you got out. And you went with like 6, 7 friends, and you walked 4 or 5 blocks from the Port Authority to Madison Square Garden. And I saw Jimi Hendrix. I saw some of the greatest acts, the Rolling Stones during the Yaya tour, the Yaya tour that they did, where Janis Joplin and Tina Turner jumped up on stage to sing Honky Tonk Women.
What a treat.
Those were great. I mean, Zeppelin. It was a great, and so I would go there. And then after I got a little familiar, you got to remember, sorry about this, folks, this is the truth. The drinking age at the time was 21 in New Jersey.
You guys, I'm sorry, I have to
got a 10-minute notice here.
Yeah, so we got to wrap it up here.
Okay, so you know, as I got a little older, drinking age was 21 in New Jersey, it was 18 in Manhattan or New York City. So we would go over there and then started hanging out again. A great time to do it in the village, in the Greenwich Village during that time. And I went to countless Fillmore East concerts in the city. So that's, you know, from the time I was, I would say 16 years old, me and the city were like that. And then when I got a job there in the corporate world, back around 88, 89 or so, it was just like my backyard.
So I have to ask you a couple questions, because I lived in New York City for a year. First of all, did you ever go to Studio 54? Did you? I was there afterwards, so I went to the Palladium.
I was there opening night. I was there opening night.
Oh my gosh! You got to
awesome.
come back then. You got to tell us stories about that. And then, did you ever Rolls on Prince Street? Did you ever go to Rolls?
No.
The French restaurant on
No,
Prince Street?
I have been to one. I was at one Andy Warhol party that I can never convey on here. Privately, I'd
Too
be
much
happy
debauchery.
to.
Was
Yeah,
debauchery?
the New York City nightlife is amazing. I had a blast living there.
It's
for a
even
year
wilder
with
at
one of my
3:30
friends.
in the morning.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you don't even go out of the house till midnight. You don't even head out.
You know,
till
that
midnight.
is so true.
You
It
be by
used to
yourself.
be, you used to sleep during the day and wake up around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, eat, and then go out. And,
Yep.
and
You come home in the daylight.
That's right. Have breakfast
Yeah.
at the
Wow.
diner. So listen, I really want to thank you.
Cool.
Please, folks, if you'd like, go and you don't even have to buy them. You could just go to the website and check out the books.
Yeah.
JonD'Amore.com. JonDamore.com. If you'd like to see a reading, go to Jon D'Amore's website, JON_D'_AMORE on his Facebook page. And I'm sure there'll be a posting about where and when you could see a reading.
Yeah.
And they're worth it. I've been
Great
to a
stories.
few of them.
Yeah.
They're always very entertaining.
Yeah. 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 Thanks, John, a lot. Really, really nice afternoon.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks.
I had a great time.
Really interesting.
Here's
You
looking
got to
at
come
you,
back.
kid.
I want to hear more.
Okay. Well, yeah, but not the stuff I can't tell you on here.
Privately,
I'm here.
maybe. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Take
Bye.
care.
Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
John.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.